Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K17. My name is Pete and today we complete the first year of NBA 2K17's MyGM or MyLeague mode with the Golden State Warriors. Probably the NBA's most hated team over the last 2 years, the Warriors are an excellent choice if you want immediate success combined with a tough challenge afterwards. The team is always a frontrunner for the championship, however their contract situation is extremely tricky and it takes a bit of planning and knowledge about the different types of statuses a player can have with the team to keep the core together long term. Speaking of the core, the Warriors probably have the most dominant starting lineup in the league, only rivaled by the Cavaliers. Starting at point guard is back-to-back MVP Stephen Curry, side by side with the other half of the Splash Brothers Klay Thompson. While Thompson is locked down for the next 3 seasons, Curry becomes a free agent and bringing him back is one of the major focuses in this video. The latest addition to the Warriors starting 5 is Kevin Durant at the small forward, who is currently the highest ranked player on the team. He has a player option, but don't get fooled by that, Durant will in all likelihood not take that and also become a free agent. The starting power forward is Draymond Green, locked down for 4 years on a comparatively cheap deal for a player of his rating, and he will be your cornerstone down low. At the center spot, we see a sharp decline compared to the other 4 positions. That is largely due to the Warriors' tendency to play small ball with Green at the 5. Nonetheless, they have a few true big men and the starting job will most likely go to Zaza Pachulia, who is 32 on the decline and also expiring. And let us immediately continue at the center spot as we look at the Warriors bench. Anderson Varejao is very similar to Pachulia in regards to age and contract. 2 years older than Pachulia, he is also not getting any better and will come off the books by the end of the season. A bit younger but also expiring is JaVale McGee, whose biggest upside in 2K is probably the fact that he is controlled by you. If used correctly, his length and athleticism can make him a serviceable player, and if you decide to go for a bigger rotation, he could get a nod off the bench over Varejao. For the sake of completion, you also have 21-year-old Damian Jones listed as center, and developing him sure can't hurt, but he's currently not at a point where he should get playing time on a championship contender. The other 4 positions are relatively straightforward. At the power forward you can bring either West or Looney off the bench behind Green. You also have McAdoo, but for him the same things apply that I just mentioned for Damian Jones. It should be noted that the backup power forward is likely to get very little playing time, because both Durant and Iguodala can also play the position. Speaking of Iguodala, he is your first choice off the bench and can be used in multiple roles, either as a small ball 4 or, if you give that spot to Durant, as a 3 and D small forward. Keep in mind that Iguodala's contract also expires. At the shooting guard you have Ian Clark off the bench, who has made a nice development in the last few years and should definitely see minutes behind Thompson. He expires as well, so it might be worth to take a closer look at Patrick McCaw, who can be utilized as a spot-up shooter already. At the point guard you have Sean Livingston, again an expiring contract and already a bit older, but 6'7" point guards don't come along often, so he should probably stay on board if possible. Now, I talked about the expiring deals for a bit already, let's quickly sum things up. Your straight-up expiring contracts are, in order of importance, Stephen Curry, Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, Ian Clark, Zaza Pachulia, David West, Anderson Varejao, JaVale McGee and James McAdoo. You also have a team option coming up on Kevin Looney, as well as the aforementioned player option of Kevin Durant. In total, 11 players could hit the free agency market, putting you in a very tough position. It might be at least a bit of a relief that of the 4 players left under contract, 2 are in your starting 5. Let's have a quick look at draft picks as well, and in 2017 the Warriors have no picks at all, and quite frankly they don't really need them at the moment. In the next 3 years they still have all first rounders, and depending on your long-term strategy, they are either building blocks for the future or trade assets. Last but not least, cap space, and this is the big issue for the Warriors. Even though only slightly above the cap this year and with a potential cap room of over $57 million next season, spreading the money will be a major challenge, as both Curry and Durant will demand max deals, while Iguodala should not be forgotten either. Now, before we go into the moves, here are your 3 key questions that need to be answered before going into year 1 with the Warriors. Number 1. Do you want to make any trades at all? I personally don't think there is a lot to trade unless you package in your first rounders. You don't want to increase your cap space too much, and you have a lot of older expiring players who don't have much trade value. I will suggest 1 or 2 moves in a second, but you can absolutely complete your first year as the GM of the Warriors without any trade whatsoever. Number 2, do you go for small ball or a more conventional lineup? The Warriors have all the tools needed to play small ball for long stretches of the game, however you might find that this playstyle doesn't suit you and make adjustments to go with a more conventional rotation that includes 1 more big man. And number 3, do you want to bring back Durant? For many, that seems to be a decision set in stone, but keep in mind that you don't have to give your other max contract to him. In fact, you don't have to give out another max contract at all. While Curry is pretty much a lock because you have his bird rights, you could still look for alternatives on the market for Durant. Even though they will probably not be the caliber of talent that Durant is, taking players like Blake Griffin or Gordon Hayward into consideration is something you could do. Alternatively, you could also spend the money on multiple solid players instead of acquiring 1 more superstar, but that is very much up to personal preference. Now, in this video I will switch things up slightly and we won't make any trades at all. In case you're interested, if I had to make trades, I would definitely not move Curry, Thompson, Durant, Iguodala, Green, Clark, Livingston and Looney. Now let's get into it, and like I said, I won't make any trades in this video, simply because there's not much in terms of assets on the team apart from draft picks, and I like to hold on to those, especially if I don't know the draft class yet. If you really want to make a trade, then my suggestion would be to package David West with a lottery protected first rounder and go after a cheap but longer term center. There should be a few interesting options available. A guy like Willy Hernangomez comes to mind. With a few more pieces added, Yusuf Nurkic should also be available. Like I said though, I won't make any of those trades, so here's my idea for 3 moves to make as the Golden State Warriors in NBA 2K17's MyGM or MyLeague mode. Move number 1, re-sign Shaun Livingston. Yep, we can skip ahead right to the contract extension deadline, where Shaun Livingston should be the only player willing to sign an extension with us. We could lock him down for longer in regular free agency, but he is already 31 years old, so a 2 or 3 year deal should be enough. I was actually able to bring him back on the cheapest possible deal, a front-loaded minimum deal for 2 years with a team option in year 3 that gives flexibility depending on how he develops. Move number 2, accept the team option of Kevin Looney. Now it's already time to wrap up the season. Like I said in the beginning, the Warriors don't need much to be successful right away. Looney is actually an underrated piece in your rotation and should be able to fill the spot of backup power forward nicely after West is gone. West might even retire, otherwise you could bring him back, but he will turn 37 next year, so I would not do that. And now, move number 3. Don't ruin your team in free agency. Your priorities for free agency should be to bring back Curry, Durant, Iguodala and also Ian Clark. That, however, can turn out a lot harder than you think because A, other teams will of course also offer contracts to these players, and B, the order in which you accept the new contracts actually matters and can be the deciding factor in making or breaking your future plans. For that reason, let's quickly talk about bird rights. The Warriors hold the bird rights to both Steph Curry and Andre Iguodala, meaning that they are allowed to go over the salary cap to re-sign them. They are, however, not allowed to do so for Kevin Durant, meaning that if Curry is signed before Durant, that would leave not enough room below the cap to give KD a max offer. But one thing after the other. To get started, you want to present a maximum contract offer to both Curry and Durant. For Durant, that's over $30 million per year over 4 years, with a steady increase. For Curry, it's a bit less, but for 5 years instead. Next, offer Andre Iguodala something between $6 and $8 million a year for 2 or 3 years. Anything longer and you risk spending money on a steadily declining veteran. To safely bring back Ian Clark, an offer of $3 million per year for 4 years should be enough. If you want to, you can add a bit more, but keep in mind that every dollar you spend on Clark reduces your mid-level exception, which is a limited amount of money you can spend if you are over the cap. It's not enough to sign high-caliber players, but it's perfect for serviceable role players like Clark. If you have counted, you should now have offered contracts to 4 players, with only 5 still under contract. That leaves spots for up to 6 more, and the center position is where you should look for players. If you did not acquire someone by other means, you should at least grab 2 guys here. The list of players that you can grab for cheap on shorter deals includes, for example, Festus Ezeli, who was already part of the Warriors and fits the system pretty well, Maurice Spates, who has also played for the team before but might be a bit undersized to bang with true 7-footers. The return of Zaza Pachulia. If you liked his production, there is nothing holding you back from offering him another deal. Keep in mind though that he will be 34 next season. Thiago Splitter, who gives you solid rebounding and defense for cheap. Mike Muscala if you want someone younger, but keep in mind that Muscala is a guy that is best used to stretch the floor as he's not a great inside scorer, rebounder or post defender. Kelly Olynyk, who could excel at both the center and the power forward spot as a scoring option, with a lesser focus on defending. He is a restricted free agent though, so you'd have to hope that Boston doesn't match. Or Andre Bogut if you want someone who exclusively grabs boards, sets hot screens and defends. After offering contracts to at least 2 or 3 of these players, even though offering something to all of them can't hurt either as you can still decide later on, you should now check one more time if your offer is at the top of the list for all players and then advance one day. Now the order in which you want to accept offers is first Durant, then Clark, then Curry and Iguodala and then everyone else. If Curry accepts your offer before Durant and Clark, then simply keep him on pending and confirm with yes. This will decline the contract for now, but keep the offer active, allowing you to sign him the next day. Technically, you could also sign him at the very last day of free agency. That would allow you to spend an additional 15 to 20 million on other players, but it's also a pretty risky move, as Curry might decide he's sick of waiting and sign with someone else. So sign Durant first, and then after signing Clark, you should have about $5 to $6 million remaining in your mid-level exception, meaning that is the amount of money you can spend on free agents who don't get a minimum deal already. That should allow you to grab at least one more nice piece, but you can also split the amount on several players. At this point, you should probably also keep the luxury tax in mind, which is something I generally tend to avoid. Once you have all players under contract, you can also look at the list of backup point guards, simply as a precaution should Livingston get hurt. Otherwise, once you have at least 13 players under contract, simply advance to the next season. And that's it, a slightly different approach than usual, but I think the Warriors have a unique situation that makes an extensive look at free agency absolutely necessary. Let me know in the comments below how you would handle the Warriors in MyGM or MyLeague. Leave a thumbs up if you liked this video, check out the rest of the series if you want to see more, or if you simply want to support the channel, then click on subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!